broadcasting around the world. This is the Hard Asset Money Show. Your wealth, your money, your future. Serious talk about what's happening and how you profit. Hosted by Christian Briggs. Follow him on X at BMC_HAM. Live in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, everybody. Today we've got a real special guest. Louis, we love the military, don't we? We love the armed forces. We love the people who serve, who have served, who do serve. We just think the best of that. So today we're very honored to have, he's a four-star General Alex Bertelli. No, major though. He was a major. He was on his way to be a four-star general, but he decided to go in the private sector. But we do have a great guy today who's going to give us a lot of insight on his past and kind of how some of the last 15, 20 years of military operations, both here in the States as well as overseas, have kind of operated and what his role was in the various places that he went. And then what's happening since he's been on the private sector mission to build one of the most successful businesses in the country. So we are back with a great show. We'll be back in 90 seconds, so stay tuned, and then we'll be able to go right down to it.
This podcast is brought to you by Hard Asset Management. We have the guaranteed lowest prices on all precious metals and rare coins. Call us at 844-426-4653. That's 844-426-4653.
Welcome back. All right, I'm happy to have and very honored to have somebody here today that has served in the military for a number of years. I won't even try to give his credentials because it speaks for themselves. I'll let him actually be able to brag about himself. So, Alex, why don't you introduce yourself to about 3 million people today?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Christian. It's an honor to be here. My name's Alex Bertelli, and I come from a military family. My family immigrated to the United States through Ellis Island in the port of Boston. I spent some time in Italy this past summer and got back to the village close where my family is from. And we emigrated to the United States early 1900s. My family lived in West Springfield in Massachusetts. And then we moved closer to Boston where I was born. My family lineage comes from a long line of warriors. My grandfather, my great uncles, my uncles all served either in World War II or in Vietnam. My grandfather, in fact, was in a division called the Americal Division, and it was a combination of two National Guard units, and he was in the last standing horse cavalry unit within the Massachusetts Guard, which is pretty interesting. And he actually went on to Guadalcanal, and they reflagged his unit as a field artillery unit. And so at my house, I actually have my grandfather's command flag, his battalion commander guidon flag, which is pretty interesting. And so I found that years ago in the bottom drawer of my dad's nightstand for whatever reason, and now it hangs in the house. My extended family, all military. My dad was actually a collegiate athlete, 2-time All-American. My great uncle was a Notre Dame Heisman Trophy winner, and he served in the military as well. So all the Boston side of my family were big football players. I obviously didn't retain any of that talent, but military service skipped my dad's generation because of that. He got a pretty bad football injury. And with football comes a lot of other injuries, so he's got some CTE and Parkinson's now because of it. But my family was a very corporate family. My dad was an executive. My mom was a commodities trader. She did it remotely. We had a Bloomberg terminal at the house. And so I was raised in a very corporate, business-focused family, and my dad retired at 41 years of age, very early on. My mom was a phenomenal trader. She could trade on volume alone, so she traded amazing stocks at the time, biotech, Yahoo, Amgen, Cisco, and she'd just do it on volume and would trade options. And so I really didn't have an inkling necessarily to serve in the military. I mean, when you get to high school, you think about where you want to go to college, and sometimes they either includes military service or you're just brought up in a family that says, hey, you're going to go to college. And so even though my family had a big military history, that wasn't really on my roadmap necessarily. But in 2001, a couple years after my dad retired the first time, the stock market crashed. And my family was on a family vacation in the Caribbean. And at the time, I think we had Smith Barney as a broker.
Barney?
Barney, and my
Lehman Brothers.
mom couldn't get a line into the brokerage to liquidate her options.
No.
She had exercised. And so we're on the nicest vacation we had probably been on. My parents had their own room. My brother and I had our own room, and we were, kind of doing separate things on this resort. And my mom didn't leave the room for the entire week. So we got back home, and my parents sat my brother and I down. And my brother at the time was already moving towards going to a military academy. But I had no plans of joining the military, and the extent of the damage the market did to my family's assets was just unbelievable. Like $4 or $5 million just gone overnight. My college fund was gone. My mom had to go to work in a Chico's department store to get health care. My dad had to go and try to get back on the corporate circuit. And so it took about a year to 2 years for them to recover. And my dad got a job with a great company called Sunbeam. And Mom eventually started trading again, but I had to go get a scholarship to college. And so I applied to a couple different schools, St. Bonaventure, University of New Hampshire, and ultimately University of Dayton in Ohio. And I needed to get an ROTC scholarship. That's the only thing that would pay for it. It was pretty expensive to go to Dayton. And Dayton's mascot is the Dayton Flyer. So it's right near Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I got accepted and went there on a 4-year scholarship. I learned a lot about myself there, knowing that I did want to go into some level of finance or business in the future. I did my undergraduate in finance on just kind of following my mom's footsteps and her career path. But I really loved doing ROTC. It was the right structure for me, my personality. And I was fortunate enough to go to airborne school when I was a cadet. I put on my Army uniform when I went to Fort Benning and jumped out of airplanes. My junior year, I went to Fort Bliss in El Paso, and I worked in a Patriot air defense unit for a month or two. So if you all the Patriot missile systems that the government's sending over to Ukraine, I worked in a Patriot PAC-3 system, which is really cool. And so that technology literally is a bullet hitting a bullet. You hear a lot about that in the news. Those technologies are interesting.
Does ROTC replace like one of the military academies?
So there's three commissioning sources for officers. So I was going into a commissioning program that would grant me a commission as a second lieutenant in the Army. And ROTC is the biggest commissioning source. OCS Officer Candidate School, I think, is the third. And then the second is West Point, so the academies.
Okay, but they're almost the same, correct?
I mean, they have different training pipelines and activities that they do, but the skills are more or less the same. Okay. So I had very similar opportunities that West Point cadets got. I had a college experience.
Double dipping.
Yeah, it was great. I loved every second of it. And so one of the things that I noticed when I got there is that all of the trainers who are training you as a college student to be an officer were all just battle-hardened warriors. I remember one of the first things that we did when I was a freshman is we went and saw the movie Black Hawk Down.
The best.
The best movie ever.
The best.
Like you're sitting in the chair as a freshman watching this movie and you're like, I want to go there. So the unit that is in Black Hawk Down is the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, and I knew I wanted to be a pilot. I just didn't quite know at the time that that's exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to fly. And so after I saw that movie, for 3.5 years, I just dedicated myself to being the best I could be in ROTC and really focusing on my studies while making sure I had some time to go party in the student neighborhood. As you move through ROTC, you're in college, you get ranked nationally. And what that means is out of 4,000 people, they give you a rank. And in that ranking, in certain percentage blocks, you can get your first, second, third choice of whatever job you wanted. So I wanted to be a pilot, number one. The second job choice was a tanker, and the third job was an infantryman. They were announcing branch results, and I got a phone call, and the phone call was from a general, and he said, hey, we wanted to congratulate you on being the nation's top aviation select second lieutenant. So I wasn't expecting that at all, but I had performed so well that they had slotted me to go to aviation, and I was number 11th out of 4,500 officers. So that was really the start of my career. I put a ton of pressure on myself to excel, and so I get to flight school, and I went through 1.5 years of flight training, and the day that I got to flight school, I put my packet into the 160th. At the time, it took, I think it was like 7 years and 1,500 hours. A lot of that had to be under night vision goggles to even apply. And I sat down with my instructor pilot, John Hancock. Dude was amazing.
Oh, great signature, I bet.
Flew Little Bird. Dude drank like a sieve, like
Perfect.
Drank and smoked. And he, we have this curriculum book that he sits down and he pushes it to the side and he goes, I'm not going to teach you that. And he goes, I'm going to teach you the real way to do things. And so this guy took us out, me and my co-pilot and I, who was...
You started?
At the time, they had TH-67s, which were Bell Jet Rangers. And so you would do kind of regular visual flying, and then you would transition over to doing instruments. Working with John was amazing. He served in Vietnam. All the instructor pilots were all Vietnam pilots, so they're amazing pilots. I did that for a year and a half, and I transitioned to a scout helicopter called the 58 Delta, the Kiowa Warrior. The day that I finished the Kiowa Warrior course, I got a phone call that said, we want to bring you up to the unit to assess you, to try you out. And it was unheard of. Like, I was shocked I even got the chance. So I went up to the unit, and they put me in a nondescript hotel room, and they said, here's a map, and here are here are targets we want you to go plan to hit, and you need to show up tomorrow to be ready to do a PT test and a swim, and you'll have a topic you have to tell us about aviation related. And so I didn't even have my flight wings yet, and I went in and did the assessment, which they're pretty vocal about now. I mean, it's not hard, it's all basics. And they stuck me in a Little Bird with one of the best Little Bird pilots in the unit at the time, and we took off, and he said, I want you to go land on that building. I had never landed on a building before. He goes, land on the top of this building, but I just want the skids on the lip. So we did a lip landing on the top of this building, and it was like a shipping container, but it was a mock building. And so we just did a regular normal approach to the top of this building, and he said, all right, I want you to take off, and now what I want you to do is a phase approach, which I'd never done that before, so he demonstrated it. A phase approach is where you sneak up on a building, cyclic climb, and then come and land on it. And so, they had me do all these things, and it was great. I had a blast, but, at the end of this entire week, they kind of debrief you, and they tell you how you did, and I'm pretty sure I failed pretty much everything on that, but the one thing that I think I did a good job of was showing that I was moldable and that I was willing to do whatever it took. And so they asked me, what job do you want to do in the regiment? And I said, I'll mop the floors if you want me to mop the floors. And they sent me out of this room, had me come back in with my uniform on and go to the president of the board, and they accepted me, which is awesome. It was such a great honor. So I went back to flight school. I graduated first in my flight class, and they brought me back up. And I was in an aircraft within 15 days of graduating flight school. So that was pretty cool. They put me in an old Vietnam Little Bird. And the unit at the time had, I think, 10 or 12 of these things, and they were literally from Vietnam, and they had V-tails on them. The unit has T-tails now, but this old steam gauge Little Bird is what they put me in, and I flew for hundreds of hours in this thing, just all over building air sense, and I was able to fly with all of the old guys in the unit, so colonels and senior warrant officers and old guys who had retired who are now like lead trainers and everything. And so that was amazing, but what I did find out when I was going through all of the train ups, we have a program called Green Platoon, and most of the guys in Green Platoon were in Black Hawk Down, all the trainers.
Wow.
So I got to see the guys who were actually in Super 6, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Did they say the movie was authentic?
Totally authentic.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, there's drama in there. They did that movie right.
So for anybody who hasn't seen it, Black Hawk Down was probably one of the best examples of never leave a man behind film.
Yeah. So I flew with most of the guys from that era. And then guys even after that, Gulf, the early stages into Desert Storm and the Balkans and the first part of the Global War on Terror. So all those guys were trainers, and I went through a modified kind of training course because they'd never taken a second lieutenant, or at least hadn't in a really long time. And they put me through a modified training course, and I learned how to be an officer for 2 years. So they put me up in what's called a headquarters and headquarters company. And I was the executive officer, and in that company we have mostly staff functions. So you have like a payroll section, you have an ops section, you have an intel section, you have a motor pool. And so all the basic leadership functions that you learn in the Army, I learned there while I was given the keys to this old Vietnam Little Bird to go fly. And so I was up there for about 2 years. And after I had made pilot in command of this little old Vietnam aircraft, they decided to send me to Chinook school. So on my way to Chinook school...
For the people that don't know, Chinook's a helicopter.
It's a dual rotor platform. It dwarfs the Little Bird for sure. And so on my way to the Chinook course, they sent me to survival school, which is amazing. I went to CRC at Fort Bragg, which is where they sent all the Special Forces guys. So it's probably the best training I ever did. They really test your mettle as a man. Like they will put you through the paces. You're tired, you're hungry, you're cold, you're wet. They put you in a resistance training lab, and they really show you what it's like to be captured. And so without going into detail, on that, what I learned the most out of that is that never quit. Never quit, keep the faith. And you'll read a lot about that. Nick Rowe, who architected that, was a POW. So if you look up Nick Rowe and see all the captivity stuff that he had to go through and what he built that program around, it's phenomenal. So all pilots have to go through that Series C level of training. So I ended up going to the Chinook course. I had a blast, and my instructor pilot is an Italian exchange pilot named Paolo Cecobelli.
Of course he is.
And of course he is, right? And so I went to Italy this summer, and we'll get to that in a second, but he moved back to Italy, and he ended up training, when he was here on the exchange program, most of the Night Stalker pilots who are transitioning, learning how to fly the Chinook. So most Chinook pilots...
Tell us about Night Stalkers, because everybody has mentioned that it's a very unique unit, right? People within a unit?
The unit is called the Night Stalkers,
okay.
And we got that name from the very early origins of our unit, where we would only fly at night. So we pioneered a lot of the night flying tactics in the Army. We had some of the very first night vision systems, and pretty much all the time that I flew overseas was at night. So I have a lot of night vision goggle experience. So that's really where Night Stalkers comes from. Our founding father of the unit is Mike Grimm, and he worked hand in hand with Charlie Beckwith at certain points. After the failed mission to rescue the hostages in Iran, a commission was established to put together a ground force that could go and execute those types of missions, but also a rotary wing force that could be capable of infilling and exfilling and rescuing hostages. And so that's really where our unit came from. Most of the forces that we supported overseas were Tier 1 special forces, special operations forces, and we would go in and do missions like direct action raids, hostage rescues, really the missions where, sometimes the odds weren't great at coming back, which I had been in a few of those. So most of the Night Stalkers that went through the program, at least at that time, 3 or 4 or 5 guys that I was in the line company with all flew with Paolo, which was pretty cool. Fantastic pilot, though. Most of these foreign pilots, they'll come to Fort Rucker, which is the Army's flight school, and they'll train, and then they'll go back to their host country, and then we just kind of have exchanges that rotate through. So I finished the Chinook course, and I went back to Fort Campbell, and I flew in a line company called the Crazy Horse. And the Crazy Horse at the time, was the only national mission force Chinook line company, which means the balloon goes up, there's a hostage, they need a heavy lift asset or a heavy assault aircraft, they bring us along to go do those missions.
Some of this is covert, though?
I mean, some of it is covert, by the definition. Yeah, there were some missions that kind of were in both buckets. But at the time, it was really mostly doing stuff in Iraq and surrounding countries. I did a lot in Afghanistan. And then one of my most favorite deployments is actually to Croatia. So we flew on the western side of the Balkan countries there. But the majority of the time I spent was in the Middle East. And so I was gone all the time flying. But most of the pilots that I flew with were warrant officers. So you have commissioned officers who are pilots, but they're generally kind of the leadership that runs the company. And then you have warrant officers who are the career pilots. It's an interesting dynamic where they report to you, but they're the senior pilots. You got to get along to meet your career goals. But most of the pilots that I flew with in the line company were all former special operators. So special forces guys, Rangers, Delta Force guys, there was a couple SEALs in the unit. We like to take ground force guys and make them pilots because they know the mission. And anyone can be taught to be a pilot, but to be a pilot in the unit, you have to know the mission and you have to be moldable because the mission and the skill set's pretty difficult to undertake. So yeah, I spent about 10 years in the unit. I was a platoon leader, a company commander. I was a liaison to a tiered unit, which is a special operations unit. And then I transitioned out of the military after 10 years.
You miss it?
I do. I miss the people. We have a guys chat group that we talk BS over pretty much every single day. But those guys are all heroes. All the pilots, all the crew members, the maintainers did some fantastic things. Tons of movies have been made about them. You've probably seen Zero Dark 30 or Lone Survivor. A lot of those movies are modeled or are purposely built after the 160th. And a lot of our friends were on those actual missions, and some unfortunately passed away. So a quick story about overseas. One of the missions I was on that really showcased how amazing our pilot leadership was, our warrant officers. We were going into a place in Panjwai, which is west of Kandahar. And all this Bedouin traffic comes in from the Red Desert up to Panjwai, but it was historically like a hotbed for insurgents, even during the Russian invasions. And so we would typically trade ground back and forth with the Afghanis, taking it and losing it for years. For 10 years, we probably did this. One night, the ground force gets the wild hair to go into the middle of Panjwai to get some target. I don't even remember who it was. But we went right into the middle of Panjwai with, I think it was 2 aircraft. And we infilled twice. We infilled, I think, 40 guys on the first turn. They went in, they set up a blocking position, and then we infilled the main effort to the target, actually. Essentially how those tactics work is you put in a blocking force, they maneuver into a target to isolate it, and the main force comes in, and they get out of the aircraft, and they go assault the target. Well, we get to the target, and the ground force is there, and they go to the target building, and there's no one there. But the ground force is inspecting the building, and it's like all completely booby-trapped and rigged. And so they're trying to find whoever it was they were going to look after. Eventually, they called for exfil because everything was booby-trapped, and the sun was coming up, and they started taking heavy, heavy fire. So these insurgents just waited. And because we had so many guys on the ground, we had to do 2 turns into the target to go get them. So typically, when a ground force is in serious trouble, they'll just call over the radio and call for exfil, exfil, exfil 3 times. And they called for that, and we kind of monitor and track where they are on the radio, and we know exactly what their grid coordinate is. And so we just pulled every ounce of power out of that aircraft, flew directly to the target, and you could hear them over the radio. Like, they were taking some pretty heavy fire. And as soon as we were about to land, they said they were close to being overrun, and they put us into a hold. And we were holding now it's daylight, and they're holding over Panjwai. We're taking pot shots, and they eventually call us into land.
Feel and see and hear.
Well, I mean, the Chinook's pretty loud, but your door gunners can see it.
Can they?
Yeah, and as a pilot, I never really, in the daytime, you don't ever see bullets, but at nighttime, it looks like Band of Brothers.
You see the tracers, right?
Sometimes you can during the daytime.
Oh, okay.
It just really depends. And so they call us in for landing, and my door gunner looks over to the 2 o'clock, and he sees guys coming out of these buildings, and immediately our miniguns on Chalk 1, which was the lead aircraft, I'm in Chalk 2, start to light these guys coming up out of the building. And it's just like nonstop. And so when a minigun fires, your whole face shakes.
When the praying starts?
Well, everyone's trained to do a job, and you just rely on your training.
Hold that thought for 1 second. We're going to come right back with Alex telling us a hell of a story on some of his adventures.
The Hard Asset Money Show will be right back after a word from our sponsor. In uncertain times, the smartest money doesn't sit in the stock market, it holds weight. The price of gold has surpassed $3,300 per ounce, up from $1,800 just last year. Silver is currently around $37 an ounce, a 102% increase from roughly $18 5 years ago. Gold is up, silver is rising, but rare coins, they're outperforming both. The Rare Coin Index recently hit 760, just shy of its all-time high of 767 from June 2024. These aren't guesses, these are hammer prices, public auctions, real money, real results. Follow on X at BMC_HAM for all news and the latest developments.
Welcome back, everybody. So we're hearing Black Hawk Down 2, an adventure.
Hopefully not Black Hawk Down 2.
It's good, though. It's good. I mean, it's riveting. So, Alex, we're just going to have you keep going. Do what you do. So bring us back again for the people who may just be joining us.
So we entered holding. Ground force is close to being overrun. They're on the radio, and we're starting to take pot shots over Panjwai from, that place was just full of insurgents. And they eventually called us in for exfil, and as we're coming into land, all right side of both aircraft are just lighting up. All kinds of tree lines and guys coming out of buildings shooting at the aircraft. And as we're coming into land, it's a very tight area that we were landing in, and the ground force, who we affectionately call the customer's lined up for exfil, and they're in defensive position. And my right gunner calls RPG at the aft, and so as soon as he says that, I dump the collective, and the rear of the aircraft comes down in the back. It's just how the aircraft works, and an RPG goes right over the top of the aft rotor system. And again, the gunners are just lighting dudes up. So we land, and at that point, we're just at the mercy of guys just doing what they're trained to do. Loading, getting counted up in order. The door gunners are servicing the target. And my co-pilot, who's a senior leader in the organization right now, great guy, he looks over, and I was paired up with him for that rotation. He looks over at the 1 o'clock and he goes, "Hey, Bert, someone's shooting at you." And I go, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, I can see the puffs of smoke coming from his rifle." And I go, "He's shooting at you too, man." But the gunner couldn't traverse, so there's limits on how far the minigun can traverse forward. And so, no, we were on the ground. We're just like, "All right, man, like, let's ride the controls together. If I eat it, you take off. If you eat it, I'll just, we'll fly out of here." And this guy kept shooting at us, and it's like, God, he's going to get a lucky shot. And right in front of us is the ramp of the other first aircraft, and ground force are loading, customers getting on that aircraft. And the very last guy, I'll never forget it. I don't remember a lot of missions, like visually, but this ground force guy, huge Ranger, turns over and with his squad automatic weapon just smokes the shit out of this guy. Gone. And right gun is like target neutralized.
That guy just got smoked. Instant. Was he a sniper?
I don't know. I never saw him. Never saw him. I mean, he was under some kind of. So I mean, you think about the Vietnam movies. Where
Right.
Yeah, he somehow had maneuvered to a spot, and I didn't see him, and I was just focused on what I was trained to do, which is take off and when right after the first aircraft.
Okay.
So we take off. All the weapon systems are firing now, and we're on our way back to base. But if you remember the first part of the story, there's a whole nother group that needs to be exfilled. And that was the blocking force that we put in first. So it comes out in reverse order. The main effort gets exfilled from the target. The blocking force comes after that. So we get back to base, and the lead aircraft has bullet holes all through it. All through the rotor blades, all in the fuel tanks. And our maintenance guys were phenomenal. We have the best aviation maintainers in the world. Came out to the aircraft. They were waiting on standby because we knew we had taken rounds. And they amass on the ramp. So we come back and we land. That ground force gets off. I'm on the radio coordinating, assets to go back to the target. And so, I think the fuel tanks are actually self-sealing, which is the great part about our aircraft. So if you get a shot through the tank, it seals and it doesn't go through to the customer sitting in the belly. So we have ballistic plating on the floor, and then the fuel tanks actually stop rounds to some extent. And so we were going to take off with that aircraft again.
As is?
The flight lead was like, "Hey, we're fine. We need to go get the guys." And the commander comes over the radio and he's like, "Nope, bump to the spare." So we had a spare aircraft. And so we just been shot at and have gone through these things so many times that as soon as we were inbound back to the airfield from the target, we just said, "Hey, run the spare up." So we have extra pilots and crew members getting on that aircraft, aligning all the systems. It's all glass cockpit. Aligning the systems, making sure that it's ready to go. So we land, commander says bump, and the lead aircraft bumps to the other aircraft, moves all the guns, all the ammo, and gets in it. And by the time I'm done on the radio, that thing's already up spinning.
No way.
It was so fast.
That fast.
And so I call up to the ground force, and I'm like, "Hey, we need rotary wing CAS," which is helicopter gunships coming in. And it was really bad on that target. And I think we had Kiowa Warriors. Remember I told you I flew Kiowa Warrior in flight school? Well, those guys are phenomenal too, but we needed 1/60th rotary wing attack. And on that particular mission, it was so bad that I requested, we have armed Blackhawks called DAPs. And I asked the ground force commander, the task force, strike force commander, "Hey, we need the DAPs." And he initially said no. And I went right above him to our commander, who's outranks him, and I said, "DAPs on request." And the guys woke up, went out to the flight line, got in those DAPs, and they escorted us back out to the target. So by this time, we're all taxiing out, and the blocking force is in heavy contact at this point. And so we jump over to refuel quick, and we head back out to the target. And these guys they maneuvered from the middle of Panjwai all the way to the Red Desert. I mean, it was like 2 miles or something crazy. But they were bounding, and they were maneuvering, and they were shooting. And I think in this mission, they had A-10 on the target who was doing gun runs, and the A-10 took fire. Hit the titanium belly of the pilot's cockpit. So we're going inbound to the target, and the camouflage is so good during the daytime, you can't see. You cannot see them. It's really hard to see. So we're inbound to the grid that they gave us. And as we're flying in, we have them put up a panel, the S-17 panel, and it's like a neon pink color, so you can see it. So they pop it up, and we immediately see this and just arc over the aircraft and stand them up on their tail and land. And as I'm coming in for a landing, I look up, and I have a DAP and a bump, which is an attack maneuver, and he is going into a strafing run on some guys over in a field next to us. So I'm looking up, seeing them do this while I'm landing. The lead aircraft lands perfectly. Pete, who's in the left seat, he lands perfectly. And the customer literally takes 1 foot and steps on the ramp and gets on, and we fly out. And so that mission was like a ton that we had done. It was very routine to go through that. And so you have that kind of adrenaline pumping in you all the time. It's pretty hard to come home and go to soccer practice or take your wife out on a date. But those are the best times in my professional life. It's hard to leave that because the adrenaline rush is so high, but the people that you're with really make it. The machines are awesome, but if you're not trained, you're not motivated, you're not on the same page, you don't have the best surrounding you, it's pretty hard to win at something complex like that.
Do you miss it?
Yeah, I miss it. I miss the people. The pilots were great. The crew members, the enlisted guys were phenomenal. And then the maintainers, we had the best guys in the world.
Okay, we'll be right back. 90 seconds.
Gold has nearly doubled in just 5 years, rising from $1,700 an ounce in 2020 to over $3,300 today. That's a 95% gain, outperforming the market and proving why gold is the ultimate long-term hedge. As global debt soars and currencies weaken, central banks are hoarding gold at record pace. Why aren't you? At Hard Asset Management, we offer award-winning service and fast, secure delivery. Call 844-426-4653 or visit bmcham.com. Protect your future with real assets. Own gold now. Follow on X at BMC_HAM for all news and the latest developments.
All right, we're back, and we're talking with Alex here, who has it's a fascinating look inside what really happens. Remember Black Hawk Down, great film, 13 hours. Remember that
13
movie?
13 hours in Benghazi.
That was a great film too, very accurate, I understand.
Yeah.
He's been sharing with us a lot of insight about some of the missions and adventures. I guess we can call them adventures to some degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly the way you reminisce about them, they sound good. But let's talk about where you are in your real life, like private life now. What's going on?
So after 10 years, I decided it was a good moment in my career to move on to do something else. And right at about the 10-year mark, most guys decide to get out and move on. And so I was fortunate enough to leave active duty and go work for Governor Bill Haslam, and at the time, Commissioner Haggerty is now a senator. And both phenomenal leaders. Learned a lot, but what I did learn while working in the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development was how business is actually done and how manufacturing companies and technology companies grow their employee base and launch their ventures and expand their companies. And that really gave me the bug to be an entrepreneur. So I left the Army, I went into state government, and I started my business within a couple months of leaving. I just had this wild idea from overseas, and on that same mission where those guys went into that booby-trapped house, it was actually fortified with like a makeshift locking system. And so I came up with this idea while I was working in state government, at the same time I was going to get my business school degree at UNC, that we could build a locking system that would prevent people from actually breaking into homes here in the United States. And so that's where I started my company, was to prevent home break-ins. And it took us about 3 years to develop this technology. And what the technology is it is essentially a miniaturized gate locking system. So if you ever go into a federal building and you drive over the gate that prevents, or that system that prevents people from driving through, we miniaturized that to about the thickness of a nickel and patented it. And it is the strongest locking mechanism ever created. And it uses a unique combination of materials. It has the same tubular nylon weave that we would use in the helicopter to snap into the floor. So the ground force would use that to snap in. So it's like backpack nylon. So we created this locking system, and we wanted to prevent residential break-ins. So my next door neighbor had a break-in. I saw this kind of concept and idea overseas, and we implemented it, raised some capital, and we went on Shark Tank. Went on Shark Tank to launch our flagship product, which we were transitioning over to putting our systems in classrooms. And ABC Disney at the time didn't want to showcase any school technologies just because they were afraid of airing it during an active shooter situation. And so we built our technology originally for residential, and after Shark Tank, we launched it further into the commercial space. So our systems are in about 10,000 facilities and locations across the country. We are predominantly in schools right now, but we're actually shifting in our 4th generation of our technology over to all commercial facilities. So you think active shooter, you think classroom. Those are just point locking systems, point defense systems. And so a teacher could press a button and lock that room down, and it would tell a central system if that room is being attacked or not. We've had deployments during actual active shooter events. So school across the street from the Covenant, the school across the street from the Covenant school had our technology in it, one of our larger deployments. One of our schools in Ohio just had an active shooter event 2 months ago, and they went into full lockdown. And
so it worked perfectly as designed.
As designed, yeah.
That's amazing.
Our biggest installations are 103 locks and 107 locks in one high school location. So
is that the norm these days, you think? We're having to have systems like this just to be able to make sure our kids are safe?
I think it's the progressive schools who really put an emphasis on safety and security first, get it?
Okay.
But there are competing economic interests in schools like whiteboards and supplies, and so it doesn't become a priority until it either happens to you. You have a very progressive board of trustees or leadership. So although the school market is very altruistic and it's growing actually really fast, the sales cycle is long. It's a really hard selling process. It's a great vertical if you're an established business or you're a huge company and you're looking to bolt on, another revenue stream. But for us, we found that our technology is actually better suited for regular commercial access control, which means you go to a building, you badge in, and it unlocks.
I mean, and define that. So like a commercial building, like an office building.
Yep, an office building. So when you take your badge and you badge in,
right.
Our system would be at the top of the door. So
Okay.
it's like a competitive product to a magnetic lock or an electric strike. You guys have used these all the time. And our system would simply unlock and
It identifies the individual through what capacity? How does it do it?
The unique thing about our product is you can connect it up to existing systems, so like a badge reader, but
Okay.
we're the only device that you can actually hook up other Ethernet connected devices to it. So what that means is because our lock is the strongest and it's lower cost, easier to install, we have real estate on the inside of the product to connect up cameras and smoke, fire, CO2 systems. And so really our device is about going after the camera and the AI market. And
So it does face recognition.
It'll do it all depends on the platform that data is ingested into, but we send sensor data, open close data, motion, light. We can use our internal camera that looks into a room, and it can do facial recognition, people recognition. You can tag someone whose face is shown up in the system, and if you want a camera on the other side, you could take a third-party camera and connect it into our lock and put it through the door. And so that's where our marketplace is going. The traditional locking world is like, I don't know, $2 or $3 billion globally. It's a relatively mature and large business, but when you add cameras and AI and data to it, it's like an $80 billion addressable market.
And how are you doing this application for military?
Well, we test bed most of our stuff with the military.
You do?
So we have an active deployment on a special operations base right now where we have hooked up our locking systems throughout a facility, and it will tell you exactly when people come in. If there's motion, it'll recognize their face and send you an alert and recognize that person, and it gives you a level of confidence.
No
which is
way.
great. Yeah.
So it actually determines friendly or not.
Correct. So let's say you have someone who's been walking around your office space, your office building during odd hours, and your security guy's like, I want to know when that person is walking around. Our camera feeds ingest the visuals at the time, and it goes to a platform and it recognizes it.
And what information can you then collect, or what can you provide for the
anything
security background?
If it gets sent to a platform that has that integration, we integrate with other things.
Right.
It could go off to whatever permissions you give for that
No way.
source data.
So you, in theory, let me just make sure I understand this, so I'm sure people watching here understand it. So I run let's say we have a daycare center, or it could be a high school, or it could be just a commercial building with a bunch of lawyers. Doesn't matter where that device resides. It would have the capabilities, if like API integrations to different things that provide that data to that person.
Correct.
It could be immediately, like law enforcement.
Immediately.
No kidding.
The great thing, though, is that it's not just for security. You can use it to inform more comprehensive platforms when to turn elevators on and off, because there's no one on that floor. It detects motion. You could turn the AC units off. There's no one on the 5th floor of the Goldman Sachs building
save
here,
some
right?
money.
So you control access, but what really makes our product unique is that it is a sensor platform, and no one else in our industry is doing that. So if you think about...
define that exactly for people listening. When you say sensor, it just senses movement, heat,
It can
work in nighttime?
Whatever sensor you want to plug into it that is capable of Ethernet,
right,
you can install it and plug it into our lock. So think about it as a switch, more or less, that is on the inside of a lock, and you can upgrade to whatever sensor you want in the future because our Ethernet is a pass-through.
No kidding.
So let's say you're an installer and you're a customer. The installer comes to you and says, hey, you put a bid out for cameras in your facility, but I also notice you have an access control project. They're two separate projects. They're both really expensive. But with ours, we combine both. And so you save the end customer money, reduce the labor costs on the installer, and now you have something that makes both people happy. So people who couldn't afford both projects are now able to afford both and afford more because our technology is less expensive. Stronger, less expensive, easier to install, lasts longer, and it's upgradable. So if you buy a system, so basic lock in year 1, but in year 3, you're like, hey, I budget for cameras, or I budget for this sensor. You can upgrade and get recurring revenue as an installer or a dealer from your customer. And it saves them money, and it makes you more profit over time because you're sticky.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So been in business for about 10 years. We've been in market for about 5 years with our technology, just maturing it. We're on our 4th generation of device, and it's our flagship device.
What's better about this than the last one? Let's say I bought the last one. How do I get the better one now?
Sure. Well, and that's the thing about products that are upgraded. The previous versions didn't have all these sensor capabilities.
Okay.
And so really what sparked our interest in this was the growth and data and sensor collection information for building platform AI systems.
Explain. See, that's what I want to get to.
Right. So
tell us a little bit about how fast that's grown, that AI sector.
It's unbelievable. You have motion, light, sensor, fire, smoke, access, open, close, vibration. All of these things could inform a platform that's smart to do if this then that.
So this is going to replace security guards.
100% it will. So.
But this is another word for, this is AI. This is the hardware with software integration that you can put in. So you're saying is if I have this device, it's a hardware piece. But what is it about? How big is this thing?
About that big.
About that big. So we're talking about probably 8 by 4 inches?
It's like about 7 or 8 inches. It's about the same size as a door closer.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So door closer at a commercial building.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I put this thing in a corner of a room, right? Or
Yeah.
above a door, or wherever people come and go, or wherever the best way to have a visual overview of that room or that space.
Sure.
I can get face recognition. I can. It's agnostic, so I can integrate with different platforms through probably simple API.
Yep.
Oh, well, Ethernet, you said, right?
Yep.
Boom, plug it in. And I can figure out that's John Smith, he's a friendly, or he's a worker, or he's okay to be in this vicinity.
Right.
Okay. And then the nefarious people, the bad actors, it'll identify instantly as well, and it could, in theory, and probably does, notify law enforcement. We've got a problem here.
Yeah. Yeah, our system its main function is a locking platform. So it goes on doors.
Right.
Right.
But it can lock and load. Load being, it calls people that need to be notified, and then lock these people. Like say a jewelry store.
Yeah.
Why can this work in residential?
Our previous versions do, but this is a top-of-door mounted system, so it would replace a magnetic lock.
Okay.
But it gives the ability to use that data stream to give the customer a level of customization that typically hasn't been there in the past because it's cost prohibitive. Most computing is done on the edge or has been done on the edge, so these cameras are so data and heat and power intensive. But our lock uses less power than pretty much every other locking system. So we're able to put cameras in there and push all of that data from the edge back to the cloud because all the AI processing systems are becoming that much better.
Okay, so again, I go back to this thing. You could, in theory, make some kind of a residential version of this.
Yeah.
Okay, because the sensor is the deal. The locking is really a activation from a proactive sensor. Sensors are the proactive mechanisms that identify yay or nay.
Correct.
Okay. Then the locking mechanism or the alert features to law enforcement or anybody. It could be on your phone, right? Do you have an app? If I buy this product, would I have an app?
Yep.
Can I see this?
You can use an integrated app. So our product is pretty agnostic to who it integrates with.
No way.
Yep.
And you got patents on this?
Yep. We got about 11 or 12 patents.
This is good.
Yeah. So
see what happens when you go in the military, gentlemen? For all you guys out there thinking at 18 to 25, should I go in military? Look what happens. You get free training, free health care, and you get a world of knowledge. But you also have to have that insight anyway, though. A little bit of that ambition,
little bit.
But it teaches you a lot, though. Okay, so I want to have you back on another show here, because I want you to showcase this product, because this could be life-saving. This isn't just life-changing. This is life-saving, man.
We've already saved lives.
You do?
Oh yeah, it works.
Well, we gotta make this product well known. We gotta get this out, because in the world today that we live in, unfortunately, as we both know, there's bad people out there that psychologically can't be fixed. We know this. And they'll do whatever they want to do, because whatever their beliefs are, that's just the way it is. And having something that is a barrier to entry, or a barrier between them, our children, our loved ones, our friends, our family, it's indispensable. Yeah. It's priceless. What's your next steps with this product? How do you break this thing to the global market? How do you get this out?
So we're partnered with one of the biggest platforms in the United States called Alarm.com.
Okay.
It's a residential and commercial platform, and we hook into their systems, and they are one of the leaders in now building in commercial AI integrations. So a dealer could go buy our product in distribution, slip a board of their preference into it that connects to the cloud and our partner, and you get all those smart functions right out of the box.
No kidding. I love it. I love that. So where do you see yourself in 5 years? Have sold the company? Or?
I think so. I think our vertical that we're in is just traditionally an unsexy vertical, and that's ripe for disruption.
And it's inefficient. That's good margins.
Yeah, it's totally inefficient. We have great margins.
Good.
But we also have recurring revenue attached to the product, which our competitive products that have been around for 30 years don't have any of that. So we provide an upgradable platform that customers can choose to add on different things based on the life cycle of their facility or their budget. And that is very unique in our industry.
That's extremely unique.
Yeah.
It's easy then.
So
it's an easy
sale.
sale.
It's wild, the ideas you come up with as an entrepreneur. I just fall into it. I never thought I'd be a lock. I don't consider myself a lock guy at all. Maybe security, but I just see myself as a problem solver, an entrepreneur. And when I sell the company and it moves on to bigger and better things, I probably won't be in this industry.
You don't want to be a locksmith anymore?
No, not me.
An AI locksmith. Lewis,
yeah.
Can I trademark that? AI locksmith. I've not had that word with AI associated yet. Okay, that's a new one. If you use that, send me 50 cents. That's my trademark fees. Right. Okay. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the show as much as I did. Alex, thank you.
Thanks for having me, Christian.
And for everybody on the show, we're going to post your website. People can get in touch with you. And I appreciate that 10% referral commission. We love this guy. 10%. I wanted 5, but he offered 10 because I got to pay for Lewis. But we appreciate you, Alex, being on the show. Thanks again, and we'll have you back soon.
Thanks, Christian.
All right. Everybody, thanks again for being on the show. Tomorrow's show is going to be a good one. We're going to be looking at the tariffs, the positives, the negatives, the not-so-sures, the doubters, as well as the cheerleaders. We're just going to have a non-biased economic impact study on tariffs coming to you tomorrow. Even though we believe the tariffs, and yes, it's going to be a little bit more of a longer road than anticipated, they are destined to work. I think that Trump has got a little bit of ideas of how to moderate some of the expectations a bit. We've got his back, and we got faith in Trump. He's done it before. He'll do it again. It's just this time there's a few headwinds, I think. But overall, tariffs have been shown to work. So tomorrow we're actually going to show that the impact study, and it's actually very positive. And as they mitigate the risk of any inflationary pressures, I think that's going to be taken into consideration. So thanks for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow on tariffs. Until then, we appreciate everybody who views us and shares us, and we appreciate everybody on X who continues to promote us. Thanks again.
Gold has nearly doubled in just 5 years, rising from $1,700 an ounce in 2020 to over $3,300 today. That's a 95% gain, outperforming the market and proving why gold is the ultimate long-term hedge. As global debt soars and currencies weaken, central banks are hoarding gold at record pace. Why aren't you? At Hard Asset Management, we offer award-winning service and fast, secure delivery. Call 844-426-4653 or visit bmcham.com. Protect your future with real assets. Own gold now. Follow on X at BMC_HAM for all news and the latest developments.